So with Durin soon to release, I thought it would be fun to compare him to the current best Pyro sub DPS Mavuika to see how he really fares next to her. Hello there, Flip here, and today we're going to be doing a deep dive into comparing both Durin and Mavuika, going over their supportive utility, damage, accessibility, and then close the video out by comparing some of their best teams, to decide who the best Pyro sub DPS is. But before we do that, as always, if at any points during the video entertained or informed, make sure to drop a like and even consider subscribing, as I talk on various topics regarding Genshin's meta and I'll try to keep you updated. Shout out to all my beautiful channel members, I really appreciate your support, it means the world to me. And also, so very soon Durin and Venti will be on banner, so if you'd like to cut down on the costs while going for them, then I would like to announce the sponsor for today's video, LD Shop. LD Shop is a very safe and reliable top-up site that allows you to get Primo Gems at a great deal starting from 15% off, while keeping your data safe. As for transactions, you only need to type in your UID and region, as you can see me doing here. Just needed to quickly refresh my welkin, and as you can see, it's here. And make sure to use my link, as that way you'll receive an extra 15% off coupon, as well as a 5% off coupon which can save you up to $50. LD Shop goes through official channels as well, meaning that you won't lose any of the in-game benefits like first time top-up bonuses, so no need to worry. And additionally, because LD Shop is so great, users who spend over $80 will receive a VIP membership which rewards you with free welcome moons. So head over to ldshop.gg using my link in the description below. What are you waiting for? Thanks to LD Shop for sponsoring this video, now back to it. Now, because I know someone will mention it, yes, you do technically have Xiangling and PMC as Pyro sub DPSs, and they are fine, don't get me wrong, but the damage gap between them and then Durin and Mavuika is just so big to where I don't really think it matters to really evaluate them, as they just aren't going to get any categories. Unless a team is built around it, Xiangling always just does less damage than Mavuika or Durin, and on top of that forces 20-second rotations, which is a big hindrance in teams that can run shorter ones. And her energy economy is also just terrible, and with PMC they just don't do a lot of damage despite having some okay supportive traits. So yes, PMC and Xiangling exist and are fine, they just aren't ready for the big leagues. Speaking of which, I'm only going to really discuss Durin and Mavuika's prospects as sub DPSs in this video. Both of these characters actually can be main carries in their own right, Mavuika being a much better one which does affect her pull value overall, but for the sake of making this comparison easier, I'll just be evaluating them when they aren't the main source of damage for their teams. I would assume you guys know what Durin and Mavuika do, but to give a small summary, Light Mode Durin, which is the only form that really matters for this video, does some damage with his skill, which also restores up to 33 energy, which gives him very low energy requirements, and when he bursts, he sets up an AoE field that deals pyro damage every second, while applying pyro every other second, so 2 seconds. On top of this, via his passive, Durin will also give a resistant shred to every element except Hydro and Cryo, and a stronger resistant shred if you're playing him with a Hex character, which are the ones on screen right now. And Durin being a Hex character himself also makes these characters stronger when paired with him, boosting all of these characters' viability. Then for Mavuika, her skill applies pyro and hits every 2 seconds, and her burst is a nuke of damage. Mavuika also doesn't have energy issues, as instead her burst is charged with Fighting Spirit, which can be generated for every night soul point in the team consumed or via normal attacks. But the normal attack method is quite slow, so realistically with Mavuika, you're mostly going to be playing her alongside Natlan characters in order to charge her burst. The more Fighting Spirit you have also makes her burst hit harder, as well as increasing the buffing she gives from her Ascension 4, which is a descending damage buff that starts at up to 40% if you casted Mavuika's burst with the maximum amount of Fighting Spirit. I hope you got all that, because to kick this comparison off, like with my last video comparing Pyro sub DPS, let's start by discussing who has the best supportive utility and flexibility, as that kind of goes hand in hand, but honestly doesn't really matter even if you combine the category, as Durin just takes both. In terms of flexibility, Mavuika is quite limited in the team she can be played in due to her Fighting Spirit requirement, which means that you do need to bring another Natlan character with her in order for her to actually function. But to be fair, the Natlan DPS are the characters that need pyro on their team the most, and the Natlan supports like Yantan and Jilinin are also flexible enough to lessen Mavuika's burden. But Durin is able to be played on all of Mavuika's teams and more, like with Onimo carries, while also not really needing another teammate to unlock that. Having a Hex character does make Durin better, but it's only a 15% shred, so losing some of that isn't really at all, compared to Mavuika, who just does significantly less damage or just won't burst at all without another Natlan character to battery her. Then comparing their supportive utility, this also just goes to Durin. Durin's res shred and Mavuika's damage bonus buff are similar amps, but Durin buffs the whole team, where Mavuika's burst buff is only to the active character, so Durin takes the first point quite easily. The next category is going to be damage, and Ooh. This really depends on where you draw the line for Mavuika. After Mavuika does her burst, you can of course swap out of her and straight into your DPS, but in a lot of cases the optimal thing to do is do a few charge attacks on Mavuika before swapping into your DPS, as Mavuika just does so much damage that this is an increase over immediately going to your carry. Not only that, but Mavuika's combos have been even more optimized with the new CDCD combos, that you can just sneak in so much damage in a short time span, and if you are able to do those CDC combos, then Mavuika just does more damage than Durin. If you're not doing any charge attacks on Mavuika, then Durin's damage is just higher, but even doing a basic Mavuika combo like C2D makes their damage pretty equal, so it really just depends on your skill level with Mavuika. But that is just one facet to the damage comparison. There's also the way the damage is distributed that matters. Most of Mavuika's damage as a sub DPS will be coming from her burst and a lot less from her skill, making her damage front-loaded, and this can have its negatives or benefits. For benefits, front-loading damage can mean you just wipe out a wave of enemies, especially if you're able to set up buffs or a vapor melt beforehand, which is something Durin can't really do as his damage profile is more sustained. Mavuika's on-field window having such condensed damage can also help with easily cleaning up bosses or pushing damage breakpoints in short windows. The only real negative to this fact is that you can overkill enemies in some scenarios, although with the increase in overall mob health, this is becoming less of an issue. So ultimately I'll be giving the damage points to Mavuika just because when played at her most basic, she's still comparable to Durin and can only scale up with how much better you get with her. And the fact that her damage is so condensed is only really becoming more and more useful. The next thing I want to talk about is accessibility, which is just how easy is the character to actually play and gear and whatnot. For just picking up the character and using them, Durin takes this in troves, as you just skill and burst with him, and don't need to commit any more brain power than that. But with Mavuika, you do actually have to think about where you use her burst and rotations to maximize the damage it does, otherwise she falls short since her initial burst hits so much damage. In a Chaska melt team for example, you can't just cast Mavuika's burst and be done with it. You want to set up a melt with Sitlali first, while being Eonton or Bennett buffed, and then you can use Mavuika's burst. And on top of that, there are also her combos where even just doing a few charge attacks before going to your carry can boost your damage drastically, and I know there are people that just don't do that. So for most players, Durin will get their teams closer to what the sheets and math say, as he is a very easy character to use, since most of his damage happens when he leaves the field. And on the gearing side of things, Mavuika uses Obsidian Codex most of the time, as it's her best set for damage, and you're better off running the Nalan support you have to use with her on the scroll set. And Codex is a great set as it just gives you a ton of crit rate, making it easy to build Mavuika from there. Durin on the other hand currently doesn't really have an artifact set, which he apparently should in the next update, but as of now he's running emblem or 2-piece sets, so his artifact situation is pretty awkward, and I do think it's easier to get sets going for Mavuika. However, where I do think Durin wins out on is the fact that he has a very good free-to-play weapon in Moonweaver's Dawn, available from a quest. Mavuika doesn't really have good 4-star weapons besides Serpent Spine, which is used in a lot of calcs with a big difference between it and other options. So while artifact-wise getting Mavuika going is the easiest, having a weapon for her and just actually playing the characters will be much easier with Durin for most people. Now for team comparisons, here's a tier list just showcasing who is better than who, where one of them is best in slot. And due to Durin's flexibility, he just ends up being the best in slot in a lot of teams, even stealing the Nalan DPS away from Mavuika with the exception of Mualani, as well as Chaska because getting a melted and buffed Mavuika burst is just too big of an upside. Some things here I do expect to shift with Columbina taking away the Pyro DPS for Overvape, but Durin does just have more teams currently, where he's the best Pyro support option. Also Navia and Varessa are kind of a toss-up currently, due to the fact that it does really depend on how good you are at doing Mavuika's combos for the both of them. In Varessa's case, she has a dual DPS combo that gives Mavuika a good chunk of field time, and this combo becomes the best way to play Varessa sitting at around 125k DPS. And a similar case to Navia teams where giving her less field time and Mavuika more is a greater deal to the overall team DPS. It really just depends on whether you're good at playing Mavuika or not, otherwise Durin is just better. Now discounting Mavuika as the DPS herself, both Durin and Mavuika are just able to enable really strong teams. Durin can technically enable more teams and is the best in slot in more, but if you do look at the teams that Durin is being played on, a lot of them aren't really as strong as the 3 teams where Mavuika is best. And if you do consider dual DPS Mavuika Varessa combos, then Mavuika just has higher quality teams, in which case I would give her the point, and that would tie Mavuika and Durin, which I honestly think is fair. As of right now, I do think both Mavuika and Durin are really just as good as each other. If the leaks of Anissa are true though, and considering the fact that we're going to be getting more Hex characters in the future, I do think in a few patches Durin is pretty comfortably going to be the best Pyro sub DPS. It is already so close and Durin doesn't even really have an artifact set. Honestly, even right now with the sheer amount of teams you're able to use Durin in where he's like good, and the amount of wheelchair and support cores he enables, even now I do think he's better, but I would really hope so considering the fact that this is basically Mavuika's part-time job. She's best as a main DPS, so ultimately I do think Durin is currently the best Pyro sub DPS. He's just way too easy to use and just has way too many teams, and he's only going to get better in future versions with all the hex stuff. But with that, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment if you disagree on anything, or who you think is better, as I would love to hear it and I respond to almost every single comment. Channel members, thank you guys so much again for your continued support. I love you all. Thank you to everyone else for watching the video, and I'll see you guys on the flip side.